there, you beautiful, wonderful, incredible human. I'm Andrea Dawn, and today we are here discussing more yoga asana, or the physical postures in the yoga practice. Today we'll focus on Utthan Pristhasana, or lizard pose. And I want to emphasize the importance of coming back to postures that we've already studied. So even if you're a teacher or you've been practicing yoga for a long time, coming back over and over again and re-examining what we think we know and challenging our long-held beliefs. So looking at opposing points of view, not only for our physical asana, but for our philosophies and our beliefs as well. In our physical asana, it's important to note that our bodies change daily. So releasing expectations of what the posture was or we think should be, so that we can practice the posture in a way that is of service to our bodies. All right, let's dive in, find out a little bit more about lizard pose. Each posture in the physical yoga practice has a Sanskrit name ending in asana, meaning seat or posture. Today we will explore lizard pose. When we break down the Sanskrit, we see Uttana, which means bursting open, rushing up, and deep stretch. Pristha, which means page in a book and also back of the body. And Asana, seat. How does this translate to the English lizard pose? I'm as baffled as you. Perhaps Western yoga observed the similarity of the shape to a lizard and disregarded the Sanskrit. Or perhaps there is a correlation that I'm unaware of. This is always humbling, exciting, and sometimes overwhelming in the world of yoga. The information, variations, and schools are vast and dense. A reminder to only know how much we do not know and allow that to be the inspiration for possibility at all times, as well as strengthen our resolve to make yoga, and in particular svadhyaya, or the study of ourself and spiritual text, a consistent lifelong practice. So this brings us to the why behind lizard pose. The yoga of the Wild West, with all its variations from goat yoga to beer yoga to booty yoga, albeit creative, adds to the confusion or perhaps ignorance of the true goal of yoga, which is to develop a steady seat for meditation. The purpose of asana is to strengthen the body so that we can attain a state of peace and freedom within. When these variations act as a doorway for someone's discovery of yoga, awesome sauce. The problem arises when the culture as a whole believes that yoga is merely stretching and sipping, and the depth of yoga is abandoned for marketing trends that do more harm than good to the minds of the people it is intended to help. Uttana Pristhasana stretches and strengthens so many different parts of the body to various degrees, dependent upon how it's practiced. The hips and hip flexors, the groin, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads. It can also have the potential to stretch the upper body, including the back, neck, and shoulders. It can strengthen the entire body, primarily the legs and core, especially when practiced with the back leg lifted. This posture also has the potential to improve balance, range of motion, and more. Uttana Pristhasana can have symbolic, metaphoric, and meaningful significance to our own personal lives. When we consider the Sanskrit, we see Uttana, which is bursting open, rushing up, and deep stretch, and Pristha, page in a book or back body. So we could consider practicing Uttana Pristhasana like the bursting open of a book that reveals so much wisdom to us and has the potential to change the entire way we be in the world. We could also consider the English name of the posture, the lizard, and connect with the nature of a lizard. Did you know that lizards can change color and regrow body parts? Now that's a show of adaptability, a quality I sometimes forget to keep at the forefront, yet is fundamental to our survival. When we acknowledge the constant of change in yoga, we immediately turn to vairagya, or non-attachment. Vairagya requires us to be adaptable. If we are to release our addictions to outcomes, we must also strengthen our ability to roll with the punches. This brings the visual of standing in the ocean and seeing a giant wave barreling towards you. You can either stand there and get pummeled or dive through it. The analogy reminds us that when we refuse to compromise, to be flexible, or entertain different points of view, life will feel like a giant wave crashing into us. On the other hand, when we're willing to dive into the unknown, consider the world and reality beyond our limited perspective, life will feel less like a threat and more like an adventure. Where in your life have you been unwilling to move? What thoughts or beliefs might you reconsider upon the consideration of being more like a lizard? What if you could trust that you would regrow what you believe you are giving up into a more adaptable version of yourself? Next time you feel yourself dig your heels in, remember the lizard. Cultivate your ability to adapt to each brand new, ever-changing moment. Because after all, you really don't know what's next. You might as well dive head first. And we can only do that. We can only make that dive when we have trust in ourselves, right? When we are not so attached to the outcome, because we can respond to the moment, to what's happening, to what's needed of us, versus our wants and desires. Those are part of the kleshas, part of the suffering. So when we're running around chasing those, we miss the present moment. We miss the opportunity to respond with the truth and the core of us. So when we see that wave coming, it might feel a little scary, yeah, and we trust in our ability to adapt. So Vairagya is kind of like the theory, right? Non-attachment. But how? How do we detach? And part of that is learning to be adaptable. Learning not to be so stuck in our ways and our beliefs that everything feels burdensome or bothersome or annoying or frustrating, because it's not just the way that we believe it should be. So, all of that being said, I hope that was helpful in giving you a little bit deeper meaning to lizard pose. And I think it's the perfect example of understanding why it's important to acknowledge Sanskrit and English. They both can provide value. So we don't have to decide it's one or the other. We can take nuggets from both. So let's demo the posture. So you'll see I have a little friend hanging out behind me on my meditation cushion. This is Rama. And that's Kazuko. You can enter lizard pose from all fours. I personally like to enter it from downward facing dog. So that's how I'm going to demo it. So I'll start in downward facing dog, right? And from downward facing dog, I'll inhale to lift the right leg and step the right foot outside of the right hand. Okay, now I'm bringing my foot out onto an angle, so it's not quite 45 degrees, right? It's angled more towards the top corner of the mat. And then I'm going to drop my back knee. Now you'll notice my knee is over my ankle and my heel is outside of my hip, right? So I'm not in a lunge position. I've got the foot outside. This is a great variation that you can use, or modification to pigeon pose. From here, I just want to check in. This might be plenty of feeling and sensation, and if it is, then I'm just going to adjust. Okay, do I want my back toes tucked? Do I want them untucked? How does my upper body feel? I can choose to work on extension here, so thinking about drawing my shoulders back and down and finding a little bit of movement in my mid to upper back, or I could think about flexion, right? I could push the floor away from me, around my spine, let my head hang heavy. Or maybe I do a little cat-cow. Many different variations. If it feels like, I'm really doing this for the stretch in my groin, for my inner thigh, for my outer hip, and I don't feel enough here, I can come down onto my forearms. So I can check in here and come down and see how that feels, right? Other things, you could work on wrist stretches, different types of things here. And you can also, if it's too much even with your hands up, you can bring the floor up to you. So when things are too much, always think about raising the floor up by using blocks or props. So if I put two blocks or props under my hands, that would make it a little less intense. If I want to work on strength, then I'm going to tuck the back toes and I'm going to lift the back leg. And now I'm going to take a scissoring action of my legs, meaning my right heel, right knee, and right hip are going to draw back, my left toes, knee, hip forward. If there was a diagonal between my heel, my right heel, and my left toes, it'd be like I was trying to shorten that up. And again, I could stay up on my hands or I could come down onto my forearms. Right? Maybe I'm lifting, finding extension in my spine. Maybe I'm pushing away, finding flexion in my spine. Okay? Other things you could do are things like adding a twist, adding a quad stretch, right? So when you're in the posture, focus on your why. What do I want to get out of this posture? And then put all of your attention there. The quality of the practice is not the shape, it's the amount of attention you're paying to the shape that you're in and how it's serving you. All right, so then you'll just do the other side. So you could come back to downward facing dog, maybe pedal out the feet, take a few hip circles, and then you would step the other foot to the outside of the other hand. I hope that was helpful in understanding or giving you a few more things to contemplate about lizard pose. Again, you're always the authority of your practice. So as teachers, we're here to offer support, hold space, and give you some ideas for you to take and explore and go home and integrate and make it your own practice that is of utmost benefit to you. Again, I hope this was super helpful in understanding lizard pose. My heart sees and feels and smiles to yours. Namaste.